I'm live. Hi. Hi, goats. Hello, goats. Yeah. Anyway, um, welcome. How are you? Let me know in the chat if you want to, if you're here. Time for coffee. This is my mermaid mug from Cracker Barrel of all places. I have a friend who says the Cracker Barrel is her favorite New Age store, and that's an amazing description, and it's kind of true. Anyway. Right, I still have to light incense, which I always do, but it's especially fitting for one thing I want to do today, which is pagan story time. I was honestly really inspired by Pink Sheep Designs recent live, where like she's still talk to the chat when people were chatting, and that's what I'm gonna do too. But also, she had this whole story that she told us, and it's always hard to get it from open flame to just like smoldering so that it burns properly. But yeah. Ooh, this is my Fairy Dreams incense. So, yeah, I was thinking like that would help me a lot to just like feel like I had something to chat about and make this feel like a chat and hangout, because sometimes when like I feel like it is my job to make this fun, but sometimes I don't know what to say, and I'm like, well, let me just try to think of something. But it's kind of hard in the moment. So I thought, well, I've had this podcast which is kind of on hiatus right now. It's my Midnight Ballroom podcast channel, and I had a lot of fun telling stories about my pagan path there. So and this is also a place where like one of the things I do besides crochet is like we can talk about spirituality, and you know, I'm pagan, but I'm also happy to talk about other paths and stuff. Hi, Amaris. I am good. A lot more upbeat than I have been a lot of days recently, so that's good. How are you? Talking about how I've decided to have a backup story, which is why my thumbnail this time says pagan story time, because that way I have something to talk about just during times when people aren't chatting as much. Sleepy, but that's normal. Yeah, that makes sense. I forget how far along you are right now, but yeah, it makes sense that you would be tired. So why don't I start with I'm suddenly feeling self-conscious. So I'm going to start with a few of my plans for the future, like yarn stuff. Oh, 2.5 months, cool. Yeah, time flies. So one important thing is my website is almost done, and I think it just needs like a final check to make sure everything's where it should be, and then I'm gonna really try to put it live sometime this week, and I'll make an Instagram post and try to do at least a YouTube short on that too. I'm in between video editing software, which is why I've been focusing on shorts right now and lives. So that's why the come and dye yarn with me for the first time video has been quite delayed, because the program I was using stopped working. So I do have another one that I'm gonna try out, but I've been focusing on like getting my taxes and stuff done first. So oh, and speaking of shorts, I've been wanting to do a lot more like tutorial and kind of here's a helpful tip type of content, besides my goat tips, which I love, but like they're kind of meant as a joke. But I want to do actual tips too for crochet, and I was thinking, okay, I find full pattern tutorial videos to be a lot of work and like kind of stressful, and I would like to do more of those, especially of like the different Japanese lace motifs that I was doing, because I love those, and I'd like to make them more accessible to people who either don't read charts or don't speak Japanese, which like I'm not fluent, but like I can kind of, I guess I'm kind of in the intermediate, but I can read charts, so the fact that those patterns I was looking at are in chart form helps a lot. But I was thinking, okay, so what's a quick version of that I can do? And I thought, well, there must be a list somewhere of like common lace stitches, and I looked, and they're like I was hoping for one that's like maybe by the Craft Yarn Council or like some crochet group, but all I could find was really like personal blogs of like maybe small either hobbyists or like small business owners, and I could do videos about how to do some of those stitches and like send a link to their blog or website, but I kind of want a big list that I can follow without feeling like I'm just completely going off someone else's work. So but I realized I had stumbled across the Antique Pattern Library, which is a thing of like free books with old patterns. Some of them are like from the early part of the 1900s. So I thought, well, if I can read some of these lace patterns, and I think some of them are quite complicated, but there are some simpler. There's a whole book of vintage flower motifs, like a bunch of different types of flowers, and I think those are relatively simple, at least for vintage lace, and it's cool to like see how to do something that looks like different types of flowers. Like I'm planning to incorporate the Heartsease one into one of my projects I'm currently doing. so I thought, well, I could just go through that list, and since it's spring, at least in the northern hemisphere, like that that helps me because it's seasonal and like people will probably be looking for that. And one reason why I'm trying to put out more of this content is so that people have a reason to come and see what I'm doing. And then if they find what they're looking for here, and then they might get to know me and that want to stay. But I kind of have to offer something for people that don't know me to like come and part of why I'm struggling is like finding the right words, but part of it is because some of the words I want to say are stuttering. But let me catch up on chat real quick. Ooh, planning Lolita dresses and maternity dresses for Lolita, like the sack dress. Awesome. Yeah, I at one point I was as I might have told you, a huge fan of Lolita fashion, and like was trying to build my own wardrobe, and was having a was doing a blog and stuff. And since I didn't have access to a lot of clothes yet, like I was trying to sew my own, but even though that's less expensive than buying, like I was still like, it was a very slow process. So I was like, okay, so I can kind of do the lifestyle thing to try to fulfill my urge for Lolita fashion in my life, even if I can't have a full wardrobe yet. So it's always so cool to hear that other people are in the fashion too. Heard of that website? I'm guessing you mean the Antique Pattern Library, but I've never actually visited it. But I may have to take a look. Yeah, it's a cool place. Like they have a search engine, and I actually found it from this blog post that had picked out a couple of books that they liked with old lace patterns, but yeah, your mom dropped a bunch of lace thread today from her stash since she's going to Hobby Lobby. Ooh, score. I'm currently feeling the urge to get more lace thread, so I'm like, I need more lace. That used to be almost a joke we would say in the Lolita community back in the day. Like we kind of like joke about the frills and lace, and like we love it, but also we'd be like just joking about our own like urge for frills. And how like lace has, like there's different qualities of lace and some of it is not great, but crochet lace is great. I love doing it. And that's one step I skipped in like my telling why I want to start doing a bunch of small like lace stitch tutorials that can basically fit into shorts or Instagram reels, because lace is one of the things that I want to be known for. Like that's one of the things that I also I know lace can intimidate a lot of people, but it's so beautiful, and I've loved it ever since I started to crochet. So I kind of want to help make it more accessible to people. Found a pattern drafting book for men online for free, and I make outfits for my husband on occasion with that book. Cool. Yeah, it's hard to find, like, in the crafty and alternative in the crafting and or alternative spheres of fashion. It can be hard to find like clothing that reads male or like is meant for men, which can be a challenge when you're trans masculine and still want to be goth or like fancy. But you're like, okay, but what does that look like if I'm not wearing gothic gowns, which, you know, men can wear, and that's great, but like sometimes for my dysphoria, like I need to wear clothes that feel male to me. So it's been 6 years since you made lace. Trying to get back into it. I miss it. Yeah, it's the best. I mean, I haven't tried making lace other than like crochet and somewhat knitting. I would love to learn like tatting too, but yeah, if there's any stitches that you want to learn, or like edging charts you come across that you'd like a video on, feel free to send them to me, and I'll see if that's something that I can do. So I think the first pattern I ever tried when I was learning to crochet was a really complicated edging chart, and I had no idea what it was trying to say, but so it was kind of frustrating because I was like, this isn't like knitting where you go back and forth, because that's what I learned first. It's like you go all around and change directions and go upside down and like the loop to loop. So it can be really daunting when you're starting out, or just when you're not familiar with lace charts. But to get into my sparkling water. Okay, the story I wanted to tell, which it's one of the stories from my pagan path, and I'll stop and talk with the chat if more chat happens, but right. So my patron god is Gwyn, as many of you know, or that's what I call him. But his kind of full name is Gwyn ap Nudd from. Well, in Wales he's known as the Fairy King, and in my practice he's a god who's the Lord of Winter and the one who guides the dead home and like rules their land, which is also the land of the Fae, and he leads the wild hunt, and he's in charge of giving the inspiration and poetry, and in a lot of my personal experience with him, or and that's what I mean when I use the word gnosis. So like just personal subjective experience. He's very much involved in teaching people skills, especially like as a spirit worker, but also like just other skills that you might need in life. And it seems like I think one of his roles is to take the gifts of the goddesses that I kind of see as his, as a group, they're his mothers and kind of the mothers of the world, and then he brings them down into a form that humans can learn and like take part in, and teaches us those gifts. So like I see that as one of his roles. So he's always been very much a teacher to me, and so for several years now I've also been his apprentice. He was teaching me a lot when we first met, but then at some point he formally asked me if I wanted to take on that role of his apprentice. And I feel like I should give a rundown of what that means, but I don't really know. I just know that I'm learning a lot from him, but it's really hard to put into words. And some of it is like surprisingly practical, down to earth skills, and some of it is like spirit work and like witchy, mystical stuff, and some of it is just like how to deal with my own trauma and reach a greater sense of emotional peace and healing and stuff. Including, I think, skills that I would need to learn to be sort of the pagan equivalent of clergy, kind of, which is a path I'm on to like kind of learn how to serve the community, both my pagan community and also like any broader community that I might find myself in. I want to kind of serve in an interfaith capacity too. So yeah, that's been going on for about 3 years, and to be fair, I have been focusing on getting to a safe and stable place with Gwen's help. So now that I'm in a safe place, but I'm also much closer to feeling like I can really not have as much to worry about. Like I'm still trying to get my business going so that I have money coming in, and I'm not just going off my my savings. But overall, it's a much better place. But so how I became his apprentice is kind of a fun story that I wanted to share. All right. I have a crochet project with me, but I got started talking, so like, feel free to crochet or like craft, or just listen while I'm talking. But I'm just going to focus on the story for right now. So I only knew of one other person that was an apprentice to any god, and it happened to be the same god, Gwen. This person is my friend now, but at the time I just knew of her, and like she was the only one who was talking about this god that I found all of a sudden in my life. And it's so hard when you don't have any content really about what you're going through. Like there was one person, but I was like, I just need someone to talk to about like, oh hey, I am glad to hear that you're enjoying the story while figuring out this lace pattern. Yeah, I love listening to stories while I'm doing things. That's why I watch a lot of YouTube. So like, I'm glad I can give my part back. So, I'm also glad that my story is something that people want to listen to, because I tend to be a bit self-conscious about like, is it like, will fiber people think that my pagan stuff is too weird? But honestly, the fiber people I'm looking for don't think that, and I know that you don't. So, but yeah, so I started to notice that Gwen was leading me on a lot of the same like story beats, or like portions of the path that this person, who I also knew was his devotee, had talked about on her blog. And I was like, I'm confident that I'm actually hearing him ask me to do this, but are people gonna think that I'm just copying her, or like, is she gonna think that? And by this point, I had actually joined a Facebook group where she happened to be there, and we had started chatting. It was a group for people who were interested in basically the path of the Awenid, which is a Welsh word that has a historical meaning and context, but in the pagan sense that I'm using it now, it means like divinely inspired poet and the spirit worker. So kind of like a bard, but more of a witchy bard, if that makes sense. So and that was something that Gwen had asked me to be also. And so then I found this group for people who were on that path, and she was also there. She was actually one of the ones who started that group. So and when I first joined, I was like, I had no idea if anyone else besides her and me were going to be Gwyn people. And so, but I just kind of took a chance and joined. And then I found out so many of us have been called by Gwyn and have experiences with him. It seems like he goes out and finds people and calls them into where he wants them to be. Like he seems to be good at that, and it doesn't seem to bother him that a lot of people don't know who he is, often for years, because like it can take us a long time to find the name Gwyn or whichever of his names he wants us to use for him. But that doesn't seem to slow him down. Like for a long time, I just knew him as the horned god from well, I was Wiccan at the time, and I'm not saying every person's experience of the horned god is Gwyn, but like for me, that's who he was. In Wicca, there's the two main deities are the horned god and the goddess. So, but yeah, so I had been kind of nervous about becoming Gwyn's Gwen's Awenith, because I was like, I don't want people to think that I'm copying this other person, and so I was still nervous. That hadn't happened. Like, it was fine. I don't think anyone in that group would have thought that, and my now friend didn't either. I don't think that would have crossed her mind, but I just had this fear, and so I was still worried about that with the idea of becoming his apprentice, and so I told him for right now I didn't want to do that, and I felt like I didn't really get a clear answer from him, except after a moment he said, well, I'm your teacher. And I was like, oh yeah, good, yeah, that makes sense. And at some point I asked him a question about like theology or the nature of the universe, or the gods, or like about him, and he just kind of smiled and said, that's a graduate level question. You just asked me, and you're in kindergarten. And I was like, aw. Like, it was just a really cute image, but also I was like, well, maybe sometime I can learn more and work my way up through the Gwyn school. So then on one of the times when I was doing a journey with him, which basically means like going into kind of a meditation or trance state, and then in my mind traveling to different places that he shows me, like it has to be a kind of very open state where you kind of just let thoughts and the images come in and see what happens. So on one of those times, I felt like Gwen showed me one of our standard settings that we had, where I felt very much like he was helping to reparent my inner child, since I had a lot of trauma and never really had the chance to be a boy as a kid, which I was, but like I didn't transition until late 20s. So I felt like I was in the kindergarten classroom, and he was the teacher, and then it sort of morphed into a setting where I was his grad student and he was my grad advisor, and I for a long time I had kind of wished that I could go to grad school, but so far it hasn't happened, but it might at some point. But I was like, yeah, this is cool. I like thinking of myself as his grad student and being in grad school with him, and so he asked if I basically confirmed that I was happy with that image and kind of way of understanding our or at least one side of our relationship. And then a while later, he told me, so, the thing about grad school is it's basically a modern form of apprenticeship. And I was like, oh no, he he got me, because I still wasn't sure I wanted to be his apprentice, because I was worried about what people would think. But I started to realize, wait, he's been showing me what it would be like without actually using that word, and kind of helping me get past my own fears without me even realizing. And he said, so I have a question for you. And he asked me if I wanted to be his apprentice. And I knew that I was probably ready to do it, because I felt what I often feel when he asked me to do something, which is just this instant sense of joy. And I said, well, I probably do want to, but I just need a bit more time to think about it, and to make sure that this is what you're asking me. Because like it's good to like take some time to make sure that you're understanding gods and spirits correctly. So I was expecting maybe a few days, but it turned out later that night he asked a second time, and it was in such a way that I was really sure that I was hearing correctly, and I was even less nervous about what people would think than I had been that afternoon. And I was more sure that I wanted to do it, so I said yes. And then I spent a few days just kind of feeling two things, one of which was, yay, I get to do this awesome thing, and the other one was, what is happening? So I was like, I need advice from a human who has gone through this, and the only one that I know is my friend who's also been Gwen's apprentice. So I'm gonna ask her for advice. And so I did. I sent her a message, and I was really nervous. So also at the same time, my ex, who was not an ex at the time, but like my ex and I were going to our friend's wedding, and by that point, since my ex was not a great person, like I had closed off a lot from them with not really wanting to, but I had done that to kind of keep myself safe. And so but then with Gwen in my life, he made me feel safe and was someone that I wanted to be with and like felt happy around. So kind of all of my emotional energy was going to him. And so I kind of like the fact that at the wedding, even though technically my date was my ex, like really, if you look at the like kind of the unseen truth of the matter, my date was Gwen, and like I am God's spouse, so like you might have heard me mention that before, but like it's basically someone in a romantic and or sexual relationship with God or spirit, or sometimes more more than one. And my ex and I were poly, so like it was I didn't see a like there wasn't any conflict on that part. Also like my like I had come to realize that my relationships in the context of my spirituality are not the same as like they're kind of my business, and so a human partner doesn't have as much say on whether I can date in the spirit world as they might in the human world. At least in my case. So yeah, I was. It was actually a surprisingly fun time at my friend's wedding, even though I was there with my ex. I'm like also really worried about this text that I had sent to my friend because I was there with Gwen, and he just made me feel really happy and like myself. And but I did keep on checking my phone to see if she had written back. And at some point I realized, given the time difference between here and the UK where she lives, it's probably like 1 a.m. So I actually hope that she's not on online right now, because I want her to get some sleep. So I'm just gonna stop checking for right now, and Gwyn had been trying to get me to stop checking, and also like he had been reassuring me that she wasn't going to be mad or anything like that. But so maybe like the next day I did get a message back from her, and like she gave some good advice, and my favorite thing that she said, which like because it's so true, is she said, well, I can promise you one thing, it won't be boring. And I was like, wow, thanks. I had already figured out that life with Gwen would be anything but but boring. But it was nice to have like the encouragement that someone else also kind of got it and had been on the same path. And since then, I have met one other person who has completed an apprenticeship with Gwen. I haven't met anyone else who is currently on one, and that would be awesome if I did. Because like being a god, I'm sure he doesn't have to like confine himself to just one at a time. But I am kind of curious like what I'll end up doing and like learning, because I have some vague idea that it'll be a few more years, but I don't know exactly when it will end. So he did say that my kind of thesis project will be the webcomic that I've been working on, like the story that's been in my mind for a long time. And at first that seemed kind of random, because I was like, well, I do love my story, but it doesn't have much to do with my the spiritual path, and like I don't think it has to have it doesn't have to be directly connected to that to be important and worthwhile. But it has turned out to be extremely connected, because both Gwyn and several other gods that have turned up in my life have turned out to also be in my world as characters that I had put in there, and didn't know that they were also in other mythologies in this world. So it is really exciting to think that I can finally go ahead and tell the story of my characters in this webcomic and this world that I've been doing for so long. Still, I'm currently working on the plot outline for that, and I'm actually getting much more of a coherent plot structure than I've ever had before. Like I had a lot of the pieces before, but they just didn't fit. Like there were some gaps that I just couldn't fill. So, oh, cool. Thanks. I am glad to have your interest. I will definitely be updating you when the webcomic is starting to be published. So, oh, cool. Figured out the first repeat of the pattern for this lace. Great. I love it when I get the first repeat of a pattern, and then I can just either keep it in my head or look back at my work and not have to go look at the pattern, because that way I can not stop what I'm watching. So that is nice. I'm not quite there on the pattern I was going to work on this time, but it's a fairly simple pattern. So this is my version of this month's Stitch and Screen Square. I just noticed that I was frozen for a bit, or still am. Well, go down. So this is some leaf lace. Hi, metal clips. Thank you. Speaking of goats, I decided on a leaf pattern because goats like to eat leaves. And I did try the actual stitch for the March square that All Knots is doing for the Stitch and Scream blanket first. But I was like, well, I know I'm gonna switch to lace, and I want to go ahead and do lace, so I am doing a square each month with the rest of the Ghoul Squad, but I'm just gonna do whichever lace I feel like doing that month. So that's what I'm doing here. Also, this is really thin yarn, so like it'll take a while to work up. But this is actually some of my yarn from Boss Kitty, who is a fellow hand-dyed yarn hand dyer. Much more established than me, but I love saying fellow because I also do that now. And I was saying earlier, my shop, or my website is almost done, and I think it will be up this week. So I have a fairly small batch of the first skeins, so be sure to keep an eye on my, I guess, YouTube Shorts and community tab, and Instagram Reels. So I'll try and make sure that people know, so you have a chance to get some if you want. But it's fun to work with other people's hand-dyed yarn too. I haven't actually unhanked and like wound up any of my yarn yet, but I'm actually planning to for a couple different projects. But I wanted to go ahead and get some of my inventory to put on the website and sell first. But I think for one thing it's time to make a second cardigan. My first one is kind of falling apart, so it's probably time to make a new one. But and like I have tried so hard to, like I have fixed so many seams in the granny square cardigan I made, but the yarn is Karen Simply Soft, and it is soft, but like it doesn't stay. So I'm like, yeah. But in better news, I finally gave him a spine. Not that he didn't have one metaphorically before, but now he has a shiny purple spine, which used to be a paperclip, and he can hold his head up because it was his neck flopped a bit before, so I'm happy that I've done that, which I had planned to do for quite some time. the cardigans situation is also why I brought this out of where it was on a shelf for a while, since I made it for how I made this for my Halloween the costume, and I was like, well, I'm gonna need alternate things to wear while I make my second cardigan. So, oh yeah, yeah, thanks for saying hi, Zara. I'm always happy for people to sneak in a hi. Just talking about my goat's new shiny purple spine that you can't see, but it holds his head up now. It used to be a paper clip, so now he has neck support. I might eventually put wire into his horns too, so he can like curl them in cool ways. But for right now, I like this look. So. I actually didn't get any of this done, but I was concentrating on the story and the news. So that was fun, actually. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I should be back Thursday. I think I'm going to update my YouTube channel banner with the times when I'm live, because that way people will know when to come if they want to. And also, like, since I took that picture in my old house, like it feels like I need to kind of update that because of where I am now. So I definitely have floppy horn syndrome from time to time. Don't we all, right? Yeah. Well, I think it's time to goat, but thank you all for being here, and goat bye.